and a luxury car dangled off a frozen cliff in Colorado. Inside, a powerful CEO trapped between life and death. But what no one expected was who came to save her. Not a rescue team, not another driver, a German shepherd and his police handler. What happened next left the entire town speechless. A story of courage, faith, and a miracle that didn't fall from the sky, but climbed from the snow. If you believe you've seen every kind of hero, think again, because this time, God's hand had fur, paws, and eyes that refused to give up. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Because sometimes the miracle you hear today might be the one you need tomorrow. The snow fell in tight spirals over the $1 Million Highway, its white breath tracing every scar of the mountain. Wind clawed at the pines, and the gorge below whispered the kind of songs only winter and danger understood. Sergeant Noah Walker gripped the steering wheel of his patrol cruiser, his eyes steady beneath the brim of a salt-stained hat. He was in his mid-30s, tall, broad-shouldered, with a square jaw that seemed carved from the same stone as the cliffs he patrolled. Faint lines edged the corners of his eyes, souvenirs from nights spent searching for lost hikers and mornings spent realizing he hadn't found all of them. His beard was trimmed but rough, like he didn't fully believe in rest. He wasn't a man of many words, but when he spoke, it carried the weight of someone who'd seen the worst and still believed the world could be salvaged. Losing his younger brother in a ski accident years ago had carved silence into him. Since then, he found his voice only when giving orders or when talking to the dog sitting in the passenger seat. That dog was Ranger, a 5-year-old German shepherd whose black and tan coat gleamed even in the dull grey light. His amber eyes were intelligent, almost human, and his ears twitched constantly, alert to every shift in wind, every echo of life or loss. Trained in search and rescue since he was a pup, Ranger was disciplined, but in his quiet moments he carried the same melancholy as his handler. The two shared a rhythm of mutual understanding, one that didn't need words. The radio crackled to life, dispatch cutting through the storm. "Walker, watch the ridge near mile marker 42. Rockslide warning in 20 minutes. Noah thumbed the receiver. "Copy that, we're heading through." The cruiser's headlights sliced through the swirling white. That's when Ranger's ears perked, his head snapping toward the window. A low metallic groan rolled through the air. Unnatural, heavy, the sound of steel surrendering. Noah slowed. "You hear that, boy?" Ranger barked once, short and sharp, the kind of bark that meant something's wrong. They rounded the bend, and there it was, a graphite-grey Tesla clinging to the cliff edge, its rear wheels sunk in gravel, its nose tilting toward the abyss. "God," Noah muttered, hitting the brakes. Through the windshield, he saw her, a woman inside, motionless, except for the trembling of her shoulders. Late 30s, light hair streaked with gold, wearing a white coat that blended too easily with the snow. A thin line of blood curved across her temple, stark against skin drained of color. Noah stepped out, cold, slicing through his jacket. "Stay put," he told Ranger, though they both knew that order would be ignored. The woman's eyes fluttered open as he approached. She looked terrified, the kind of fear that had already rehearsed its ending. "Ma'am," he called over the wind, "I'm Sergeant Walker with the sheriff's office. Can you hear me?" Her lips parted, her voice breaking like ice on the river. Olivia Brooks. Recognition flickered. He'd read that name somewhere. A tech company in Denver. Something big. But right now, she wasn't a CEO. She was a human being on the edge of forever. Ranger jumped from the cruiser, paws landing soundlessly on the snow. He sniffed the air, calculating the danger like he could taste it. Then he moved toward the car, low and deliberate, tail stiff with purpose. The Tesla creaked again, one tire sliding an inch closer to eternity. "Ranger, hold!" Noah commanded, but the dog pressed forward anyway, instincts older than orders taking over. He placed both front paws on the driver's door, locking eyes with the woman inside. She froze, her breath fogging the window. The shepherd's calm gaze, steady, alive, was louder than panic itself. "Good boy," Noah murmured. He pulled the rescue line from the back of the truck, wrapping it around a pine rooted deep in rock. His hands moved quickly, automatically, muscle memory from too many winters. The rope burned against his gloves as he tied the knot. "Olivia, I'm going to get you out," he called. The cliff responded with a low rumble, snow shifting beneath his boots. Noah slid closer, every step a negotiation with gravity. Ranger took the other end of the line in his jaws and crawled beneath the rear axle. The dog's breath puffed in white clouds as he threaded it through like he'd done 100 times before. The rope strained, the car held. Inside the Tesla, Olivia's mind flickered between disbelief and exhaustion. She thought of her mother's voice. Keep driving forward, no matter the weather. But the only forward now was down. Then the shepherd's amber eyes met hers again, and for the first time in hours, she felt anchored. "Stay with me," Noah said softly. "You're doing great." Her laugh came out like a sob. "You have a strange idea of great." "Comes with the badge," he replied, a ghost of humor in his tone. Ranger dug his paws into the snow, muscles rippling beneath his coat as he leaned against the car's side panel. The Tesla trembled but stopped sliding. Far below, water thundered through the gorge, a reminder of what waited if they failed. Above, the sky began to bruise with oncoming night. Then came another sound, a dying engine coughing somewhere far off. Down the road, a battered blue bookmobile sputtered to a halt beside the narrowing shoulder. Behind the wheel sat June Alvarez, 65, with grey hair pinned under a knitted hat the color of optimism. Her round glasses framed eyes that had spent a lifetime reading happy endings that didn't exist outside of fiction. "Not today, Dolores," she muttered to her vehicle, patting the cracked dashboard. The bookmobile wheezed like an asthmatic dragon. "We've got children waiting for story hour." She didn't yet know that fate had parked her on the same mountain where a CEO clung to life, and that a shepherd named Ranger was about to change all their stories. The storm thickened, the wind sharpening into a hymn. Noah tightened the rope, his breath frosting in the air. "Okay, Olivia, on my count. 1, 2, the rear wheel lurched, gravel giving way. For a breathless instant, the car tilted, metal screaming against ice. Ranger lunged forward, pressing his shoulder into the fender, every muscle straining. Noah yanked hard, the rope cutting deep into his gloves, and somehow, impossibly, the car stopped. Silence fell, broken only by Olivia's ragged breathing. Noah exhaled, chest heaving. Ranger backed away slowly, snow clinging to his fur. He looked up at his handler, then at Olivia, as if to say, "Don't worry, we're not done yet." Somewhere beneath them, the gorge sighed, a deep, ancient exhale. Above it all, a shepherd stood firm, refusing to let go. Snow thickened around the rescue site until the mountain itself seemed to vanish into a blur of white breath. The cliff hummed with the echo of what almost was death deferred by a few good instincts and one determined dog. Noah tightened the last knot on the rescue line, his gloves torn and palms raw. The strain had left his shoulders aching, but relief warmed him in a way the Wyoming wind could never take away. Across from him, Olivia Brooks sat wrapped in an emergency blanket, shivering but upright, her hair, golden under the fading sun, plastered to her cheek with streaks of melted snow. She kept her eyes fixed on Ranger, who stood watch a few feet away, tail low, ears twitching at every sound, like a soldier refusing to stand down. "Breathe slow," Noah said gently. "You're safe now." Olivia looked up at him. "Safe feels like a word I forgot." Her voice trembled, equal parts exhaustion and disbelief. Noah didn't press. He'd learned long ago that silence sometimes carried more comfort than words. Instead, he checked her vitals, flashlight cutting through the pale dusk. "Mild hypothermia, maybe a sprain. You're lucky." "Luck?" she whispered, glancing at the cliff's edge. "I think luck's got a name and 4 paws." Ranger tilted his head as if accepting the compliment, then sat neatly beside her, pressing his shoulder into her knee. That was when headlights pierced the swirling snow, a sleek black SUV creeping up the narrow road. It stopped just short of the cruiser. From it stepped a man in his early 40s with slicked-back dark hair and a face built for negotiation. Victor Kane, his name would turn out to be, though he introduced himself like a press release. His navy parka fit too perfectly, and his shoes, polished leather, had never met mud. "Sergeant Walker?" His voice was smooth, rehearsed. "I'm with Alpine Dynamics. I believe you found someone of great importance." Noah straightened slowly. "Found a person in danger, that's all I need to know." Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The board's aware of the situation. A medevac is en route. Ms. Brooks, the company is relieved you're unharmed. However, I must ask that you refrain from giving statements or photographs to anyone. Liability, you understand." Ranger gave a soft, skeptical growl, the polite kind that still carried a warning. Olivia's jaw tightened. "Victor, stop. This isn't a press conference." Victor's tone sharpened. "Our stock is down 2% already. We can't have rumors about the CEO of Alpine Dynamics stranded on a mountain road. Investors are delicate creatures." Noah stepped between them, one hand resting on Ranger's collar. "She just nearly died. Maybe she gets a minute to be human before she's a headline." Victor's gaze flicked to the badge on Noah's chest, then to the mud-splattered dog beside him. He smirked faintly as if class and compassion were opposites. "Sergeant, we all have our roles. Hers happens to include saving jobs, not pets." The word hung like smoke. Ranger's ears flattened, his low growl deepened, no longer polite. "Careful," Noah said, his tone even but firm. "That pet's the reason your CEO is breathing." Victor took a measured step back, raising his hands slightly. "Fine. Just get her to the clinic before this mountain buries the both of you." Before Noah could answer, his radio crackled. "Walker, we've got incoming rockfall near the pass. Road's closing in 15. You'll need to clear out." He cursed under his breath. "We're moving." As he helped Olivia toward the cruiser, the storm flared again, snow pelting sideways, reducing the world to noise and shadow. Ranger ran ahead, checking every few paces, his outline fading and reappearing in the flurries like a ghost made of loyalty. "Sergeant," Olivia murmured as she leaned against him, her legs trembling. "Do you ever get used to fear?" Noah adjusted his grip on her shoulder. "No. You just learn to move while it's there." They reached the cruiser, breath steaming in the cold. Behind them, Victor's SUV revved and turned around, tires spinning, headlights swallowed by the storm. Noah glanced back once. He didn't like leaving people, even the ones who deserved it, but his instincts said the mountain wasn't done with them yet. Ranger jumped into the back seat, shaking snow from his coat. Olivia managed a faint smile. "He listens better than most people I know." "He's been trained to trust what matters," Noah replied. "Wish I could say the same for everyone." She looked at him, something vulnerable flickering behind her exhaustion. "Thank you for not treating me like a headline." Noah gave a half smile. "Headlines don't bleed, people do." Outside, thunder rolled somewhere deep in the canyon and the radio carried faint static. Storm warning upgraded to severe. The cruiser's engine groaned to life, and as it pulled away, Ranger turned his head toward the cliff, eyes narrowing against the wind. He sensed something coming, something the weather couldn't hide. But for now, they were alive, and for Noah and Ranger, that was enough to keep driving. By midnight, the storm had grown teeth. Wind howled through the pines, shaking loose sheets of ice that clattered down the cliff like shards of glass. Noah tightened his coat and squinted through the beam of his headlamp, breath ghosting into the dark. "Almost there," he muttered to himself, more prayer than statement. Ranger trotted ahead, nose low to the snow, tail sweeping like a compass needle. The dog's fur was soaked, clumps of frost hanging from his legs, yet his movements were sure, steady as if the mountain had taught him its steps. Beside Noah trudged Leo Alvarez, the teenager whose oversized parka made him look like a boy pretending to be a man. 17, wiry, with dark curls and a grin that had weathered more trouble than it should have, he was June's grandnephew, the kind of kid who helped anyone with a broken car, but avoided his own homework with military precision. His mother, a nurse, raised him alone after his father died in a logging accident. Maybe that's why he never joked about fear. He just used humor to walk through it. "Sergeant," Leo puffed between breaths, "you ever get the feeling the mountain's watching us?" "It is," Noah said. "That's why we move quiet." They were following Ranger's tracks toward the last signal ping from Hank Devlin, a retired lineman who refused to retire from adventure. Hank was 72, but still built like a stubborn oak. When he'd moved to Ouray years ago, he became the local handyman, the guy who could fix anything except his tendency to wander off without warning. Tonight, that habit had turned into a full-blown emergency. Ranger froze suddenly, his nose pressing to the ground. His tail straightened, then flicked once, alert. "Got him?" Noah whispered. Ranger barked once, then took off through a narrow switchback. They followed, the snow crunching beneath their boots, until the beam of Noah's flashlight caught a shape slumped against a fallen log. Hank sat half buried in snow, his right ankle twisted at an angle that defied optimism. His weathered face, framed by a grey beard, was pale but defiant. "Evening," Hank rasped, voice gravelly but steady. "Didn't think I'd need a welcoming committee." Noah knelt beside him, checking for pulse and response. "You picked a bad night to go hiking." "Didn't pick it," Hank grumbled. "The stars did. You don't argue with stars." Leo smirked. "You should have tried arguing with the weather instead." Hank grunted, wincing as Noah splinted his ankle with a strip of plastic and a rope. "You're a mouthy kid." "Runs in the family," Leo said. Ranger pressed close, his warm body against Hank's side. The old man's trembling hand sank into the shepherd's fur, and for the first time that night, he stopped shivering. His eyes softened, and his voice came out quieter. "Good dog. Reminds me of my old girl, Daisy. Saved my hide once in '89. Avalanche took the cabin, not Us? Guess I'm due another favor. Looks like you got one, Noah said, glancing at Ranger. He doesn't give up easy. The journey back was slow and brutal. Leo fashioned a makeshift sled from a broken litter frame and a tarp, knotting the rope with teenage determination. Noah hauled, muscles burning. Ranger circled the group, guarding their perimeter as the snow thickened into a blinding curtain. Every few yards, the dog paused, testing the air, making sure the mountain hadn't changed its mind about letting them go. When they finally reached the road, the bookmobile's headlights shone faintly through the veil of snow. June Alvarez, wrapped in two scarves and sheer stubbornness, stood waving her flashlight like a lighthouse keeper. Her cheeks were red, her eyes wet with relief. "Don't you dare die on me, Hank Devlin," she shouted as they approached. "I still owe you a rematch at chess." Hank chuckled weakly. "You'll have to let me win for once." June ignored him, fussing like a mother hen as Leo loaded Hank into the back of the van. "You're grounded," she scolded, voice cracking. "And I don't mean the good kind of grounded." Noah smiled faintly, exhaustion etched deep into his features. Ranger sat by his side, panting clouds into the air, eyes reflecting the van's taillights like twin embers. The mountain had taken its toll, but not its due. When they finally returned to the cliff pullout, Victor's SUV still idled like an unwanted guest. Olivia sat by the cruiser, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, her face pale but alive. The moment she saw Ranger, she straightened, a fragile smile breaking through her fatigue. He padded over, nudged her hand once, then sneezed, directly in Victor's direction. Noah chuckled. "Guess he's got opinions about your PR department." Olivia laughed softly. "Smartest one in the room." The night settled around them, cold but merciful. Somewhere behind the clouds, dawn waited its turn. Morning arrived shyly, sunlight creeping across the ridge like someone afraid to wake the wounded. The sky was pale gold, clouds dissolving after the night's tantrum. The medevac helicopter returned, a red cross glinting faintly against the white wilderness. Olivia stood near the landing zone, wrapped in a hospital blanket, stitches lining her temple like punctuation marks in a sentence still unfinished. Her eyes, grey-blue and sharp, carried the exhaustion of someone used to power but unaccustomed to weakness. As the paramedics readied the stretcher, she gestured to Noah. "I built a company that tried to predict the world," she said quietly. "Turns out the only thing harder than forecasting weather is controlling it." Noah smiled faintly, his voice steady, low. "The mountain's not much for control. Neither's life." She looked down at Ranger, who sat obediently by her boots, fur dusted in frost. "Your partner doesn't seem to fear much," she murmured. Noah crouched, scratching the shepherd's chest. "He does. He just fears losing you more." The rotors thundered to life, scattering snow into a frenzy. Ranger growled softly. He never liked machines that stole people. As Olivia was lifted into the helicopter, the dog stood watch. Amber eyes locked on her until the sky swallowed her completely. When the sound faded, the mountain seemed to exhale. Down the road, June Alvarez's bookmobile sputtered awake thanks to Leo's persistence. The boy, with oil stains on his gloves and a grin too bright for the grey morning, slammed the hood shut. "Told you, Dolores," he said, patting the old van. "You've got a few more story hours left in you." June, her grey hair tied back in a bun that refused to quit, handed him a thermos. "Hot chocolate for heroes. Don't tell your mother I added coffee." She turned to Hank Devlin, now standing on crutches, ankle wrapped tight, but pride uninjured. "You'll still host Story Hour?" she asked. "Wouldn't miss it," he said. "Today's theme? Cliffhanger. Appropriate, don't you think?" June snorted. Pride and Preventable Falls would work too. Laughter scattered the morning's chill. But the peace was temporary. In Denver's glass towers, another storm gathered, digital this time. Rumors spread that Alpine Dynamics, Olivia's company, had launched a faulty AI route planner, the same system that led her onto a closed road. The story hit the markets before breakfast. By afternoon, Noah's phone buzzed. "Truth needs a seatbelt," the message read. Then another. "Can you come? Bring him. Him equal Ranger, though you too, obviously." Noah grinned, shaking his head. "She's giving orders again." Ranger wagged his tail like he'd been waiting for that. They arrived at the Ouray Community Hospital, a humble building of brick and hope. Reporters crowded outside, bundled in parkas and anticipation. Inside, Olivia stood at a podium in a navy blazer over her hospital gown, the stitches on her forehead stark under the fluorescent lights. Beside her, Victor Kane looked carved from ice, his expensive watch flashing every time he checked the time. He'd shaved that morning, but the fatigue behind his perfect posture betrayed sleeplessness and fear. For profits, not people. Olivia took a breath, her fingers gripping the podium's edge. "Our model failed," she said, voice clear despite the tremor beneath. "I failed. The mountain told me to listen and I had noise cancelling on." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victor shifted uneasily. Olivia continued, steadier now. "We're open sourcing the safety module today, and we're funding rural search and rescue teams across the Rockies, starting right here." She glanced down at Ranger, who lay at her feet like a hearth with a heartbeat. "The grant will be named after the one who never asked what it would cost. Ranger." The cameras flashed. For a moment, everyone in that sterile room forgot about stock prices. Victor leaned toward the mic, ready to drown the moment in disclaimers. "Of course, the board will..." And right then, Ranger yawned. Loudly. The reporters laughed. Someone caught it on camera, and by nightfall, the image of the German shepherd's unimpressed expression would be shared thousands of times. Even Victor cracked a reluctant smile, the sound that escaped him small and honest, like a snowflake learning it was water all along. The press conference ended not with applause, but with something rarer. Quiet belief. Outside, as snow began to fall again, Noah clipped Ranger's leash and looked at Olivia through the glass doors. She was smiling for the first time without pretending. Ranger barked once, short and sure, as if to say, "We're not done yet." Spring came quietly to Ouray, softening the scars the winter had left behind. The river ran louder, impatient to tell its story again. Wildflowers dotted the hillsides like small apologies from the earth. At the trailhead, the county held a modest ceremony, no champagne, no cameras, just warm breath in the mountain air. A red ribbon fluttered in the wind before being cut by Hank Devlin, now walking better, his crutches replaced by a hiking stick hand-carved from pine. His hair, more white than grey now, caught the sunlight as he grinned. "Told you I'd outlive the snow," he said, and the crowd laughed. Beside him stood June Alvarez, her bookmobile freshly painted with the words, "Hope Travels." She poured hot cocoa into paper cups for anyone who'd take it, her hands steady despite the cold. "Free refills," she declared. "Stories come with them." Ranger sat by the makeshift podium, chest out, fur gleaming in the morning light. Around his neck hung a silver tag engraved Ranger's Fund, the same name now printed on the new rescue equipment stacked nearby, Noah had polished that tag himself, even though he'd pretend otherwise. The dog shifted only when Olivia Brooks stepped beside him, coffee thermos in one hand, the other brushing through her loose hair. Olivia had changed, gone with the power suits and sleek heels. Now she wore jeans, a forest green jacket, and the easy smile of someone who'd finally stopped running. The faint scar above her eyebrow had faded, but it hadn't disappeared. It simply became part of her. As the ceremony wrapped up, Leo Alvarez bolted up the slope carrying a brass plaque. 17 still, though taller now, his curls catching every bit of sunlight they could find. He placed the plaque near the edge of the overlook where the Tesla had once hung, suspended between life and gravity. The inscription read, "For the night that held on and the dog that held tighter." People applauded softly. Even the mountain wind hushed for a heartbeat. Later that afternoon, the town gathered for its first Rangers Fund fundraiser at Grace's Cafe, a cozy diner smelling of cinnamon and gratitude. Olivia helped June serve pie slices while Noah handled the raffle table with Hank. The shepherd, meanwhile, performed his own duties, wandering between tables, accepting compliments with the stoicism of a celebrity who preferred meatballs to fame. At one table sat a newcomer, Dr. Evan Moore, a veterinarian in his early 40s, recently moved from Durango. He was lean, sharp-eyed, with weathered hands that spoke of years treating ranch dogs and mountain rescues. He reached down to scratch Ranger's ear. "You've got a wise one here," he said. Noah nodded. "He's seen more than most men I know." Evan smiled faintly. "Then you've both done good work. I'd like to volunteer with the fund, set up a canine first aid workshop." "Deal," Noah said, shaking his hand. There was something calm about Evan, a man who'd made peace with solitude, the kind of person who didn't speak unless it mattered. By evening, lanterns glowed along Main Street. Music drifted from the cafe, the sort played not for dancing but for remembering. Olivia leaned against the porch rail beside Noah, both holding mugs that steamed against the cool dusk. Ranger lay at their feet, half asleep, one ear twitching at the sound of laughter below. "Hard to believe it's been months," she murmured. "Feels like everything that mattered began on that mountain." Noah's voice was low. "Sometimes life doesn't start with plans. Sometimes it starts with a mistake that refuses to end badly." She smiled, eyes glistening in the lantern light. "You and your dog, always making sure people don't fall off cliffs." "Occupational hazard," he said with a shrug. As twilight deepened into violet, they took Ranger for one last walk along the ridge. The world was quiet except for the rhythm of paws in the grass. Olivia slipped once on a loose stone, catching herself. Ranger froze, head whipping back, eyes sharp. "Easy, sir," she said, laughing breathlessly. "I'm staying." Ranger held her gaze for a long moment, then turned, satisfied, tail waving like a small, proud flag. The sun sank behind the peaks, painting the gorge in rose and gold. Noah threw a tennis ball into the last light. Ranger leapt, muscles coiled and sure, catching it mid-air, a dark streak against the fading glow. When he trotted back, Olivia knelt, scratching his neck. "You saved my life," she whispered. The shepherd leaned closer, pressing his weight into her. If love had a language, that was it. And as the first stars appeared, the mountains seemed to smile, a slow tectonic smile, as if it had seen countless kinds of love, but rarely one guarded so faithfully by four paws. In the quiet of that mountain town, where faith met frost and courage wore fur, one truth shone clearer than the morning sun. Miracles don't always come down from heaven. Sometimes they walk beside us on four paws. Ranger didn't just save Olivia's life, he reminded everyone who watched that God's grace often hides in the ordinary, in a dog's loyalty, a stranger's kindness, or the stubborn hope that refuses to die in the cold. The Lord doesn't always send thunder or angels with wings. Sometimes he sends a heartbeat that won't give up, a hand that refuses to let go, a moment that whispers, "You are not alone." And maybe that's the miracle we keep missing in our daily lives. That love, faith, and second chances are still alive, waiting quietly in the people and creatures around us. So as you finish this story, take a breath and look around. Maybe your ranger has already found you. In the warmth of a pet, a friend, or a small act of grace that carried you through a storm. May God bless you. May he walk beside you in every hard road, and may his love remind you that miracles are never far away. If this story touched your heart, please share it, leave a comment, and subscribe to help us spread more stories of faith, redemption, and the quiet power of love. Because sometimes the miracle you share might be the one someone else is praying for tonight.